You ready?
Yeah.
Yes!
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Who knows? Maybe it'll fall into the category of 2 Jews, 3 opinions. We will soon see. My special guest joining us from Israel, Moshe Gersht, is the author of It's All the Same to Me. He's got quite an interesting personal story as well, and we're going to talk about as much as we can in our time together this morning. Also, Moshe joins us on Zoom, so you want to check us out, facebook.com/630KHOW. You can see me and him. We are thousands of miles apart, but we're going to be talking. So with that, shalom, Moshe.
Hi, Ross. How you doing?
Really good. And isn't it amazing to be like 10,000 miles apart and being able to look at each other and talk in real time? It's an incredible thing.
I love the time we live in. This is amazing.
Before we get to your book, can I just ask you a couple of unbook-related questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Where do you live in Israel?
I live in Jerusalem.
And how have the last couple of weeks been for you since the ceasefire?
Great.
Does it feel like normal, or does it still feel a little different, like some hangover from all that?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, I really try to focus on what's going well and focus on the good things that are going on in life. So, to me personally, it has felt normal. Yeah, if that's the word we want to use.
Yeah. All right. And then one other non-book related thing. Do you think it's likely that Netanyahu will no longer be prime minister after a little while? And if you have any opinion about that, I'd love to hear it, but you might not really have one.
Yeah, I mean, it looks that way. I mean, I just heard this afternoon, my wife told me that they're going to be swearing in a new government this Sunday. So if that's true, it looks like it'll be a government that doesn't have Netanyahu in it. Personally, I mean, I've been living here for about 10 years, and he's been the prime minister the whole time that I've been here. And, I've got to see a lot of really good things happen during this time. A lot of unfortunate things happen during this time. And that's probably true for every president or prime minister anywhere you go. So I only have appreciation for the things that have gone well. And if he'd still be there, I'd probably be happy. And if there's someone new, I'm going to cheer him on, because whoever's going to lead the country you're in, I guess we got to get behind him.
That is all very consistent with the way you think and the way you write in your new book. It's all the same to me. So I'm not surprised by that, by those answers at all. All right. So before we talk spirituality and all this, just 2 quick things. First, just so you know who you're talking to, I was raised conservative in the Jewish sense, not the political sense. Maybe that too. But when I did my bar mitzvah, it was all in Hebrew, and I pretty much functioned like the rabbi, and not like the reform stuff where someone will go and do 5 minutes of Haftorah in Hebrew and the rest a little in English and let the rabbi do it all. It was pretty hardcore, not orthodox, but pretty hardcore. And yet, while I am a very strong supporter of Israel, Zionist, I'm really not a person of deep faith. At most, you'd call me agnostic, but I think atheist would be more accurate. And I'm very curious about all the spiritual stuff, but I have such a hard time getting to it myself. So I just wanted to have that as a kind of context for you as we drift into this. I think that there are lots of Jews like me, especially in the United States and maybe in Israel. Israel is actually a more secular country than a lot of people think. So I just wanted you to have that in mind. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you about before we talk spirituality is your path from pop rock singer to doing what you do now. It sounds like a fascinating story.
Yeah, I mean, regarding your first point, that makes a lot of sense. You said, there's, probably a lot of Jews out there like you, but I venture to say there's a lot of people out there like you, in the world. So that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of my music background, that was my life for close to a decade. I was the lead singer, songwriter, and guitar player for a rock band in Los Angeles. And what can I say, man? That was the life. That was great. On stage, a few nights a week, we were touring. we were signed to an indie label in LA. We had an album out that was nationally distributed at the time when CDs were still a thing. So it was in, all the Targets and Best Buys and Tower Records and all that. And a beautiful, beautiful experience. And then along the way, when I was around 20 years old, somebody asked me a question that totally changed the direction of my life. And he had asked me, how long are you going to do this for? How long are you going to play music for? Which I think is a funny question to ask a singer, right?
Yeah.
And I'd never thought about it. And, after he pushed me a few times to answer the question, I said, probably till we're successful and then we'll settle down, and have a family. I'm a family man. I love family. And for me, that, comes at the top of my priority lists. And he said, when's that? I said, when's what? He said, when's successful? And at the time, I think I just told him to have another beer and to kind of like leave me alone.
Was this all over one conversation, or is it multiple conversations?
It was at my record release party of the last album that we put out together. And the timing was strange. The person who asked was strange. It was all in one 3-minute conversation, but the question burned in me like a fever for like the next 2 weeks. I couldn't get it out of my head. Like, what is success? I never thought about that. I thought you just do what you love and that's it. Right? Like I'm a very passionate teenager and I was really excited about my life and what I was doing. And we were having success. We were playing with our favorite bands at the time and, selling CDs, and I never thought about it. And then when I actually started giving it some real thought, I was hit with this like wild aha awakening moment of, do I really want to go down a path where the overwhelming majority of people who have had great success in that field basically want to kill themselves or, have suffered from some crazy addiction or from depression, anxiety, and lots of other psychological things. Meaning the deeper I went into thinking about it and then actually seeing what the path had in store, which I'd never thought about before, it made me go deep in and question, wait a second, what's this whole thing about? I've never really questioned what life is about and what I'm doing here and what kind of life I want to lead. And so I hit a hard stop on everything and went to go search for what at least my life would be about.
Wow. I mean, you were on path to be the next Jewish rock star after the Beastie Boys, I guess, and you just and you just put a pause on it. Wow. Not a lot of people want to just easily give up the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but that I think it really says something, especially for a young guy, as you are, and you were even younger at the time, obviously, to have that kind of, well, I guess you describe it as awakening, perhaps, something like that. You don't hear those stories all that often. Let's dig into your book a little bit. And for those just joining, my special guest, Moshe Gersht, his book is called It's All the Same to Me. So you can, find it at your favorite bookstore, looking with that title, It's All the Same to Me. Moshe has his own website, moshegersht.com. For those not too down with Hebrew pronunciations and all, MosheGersht.com. It's in the title of your book, the word same. You talk about sameness, and you turn sameness into a very deep concept. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, and thanks for asking. The title got a lot of back and forth feedback when I first, put it down and said it's all the same to me. A lot of people's response was, that doesn't sound like anything I'd ever want to read. Why would I want to read anything that makes everything the same? And of course, it's a play on the truth of life, which is really everything's different on the surface, right? Meaning every human being's different. Every cat and dog and tree and blade of grass down to, every speck of dust. We live in a world that's completely different and in constant change. So truly, there's nothing the same that we can perceive with our eyes and hear with our ears. But when we go deeper, right, we have to come to a conclusion that we're sharing a similar, and if you go all the way in, a same experience that is this thing called life. We're all moving through life, and in that we're all the same. When you probe even deeper and you ask, what is it that that creates our life experience. It's that we all are living this conscious reality where you and I, even though we're thousands and thousands of miles away, we're here sharing this experience together at the same time. And when we focus on what is the same, so you and I come together, the metaphor I like to use is when you walk into a hotel, a place that you haven't been before, the first thing you do is you try to look for things that you recognize. We're always looking for rapport, like that. We feel comfortable when we feel things are similar to us. We gravitate towards our brethren, the people that like have similar backgrounds, or your first impression is going to be really strong. But if you tear all of those first impressions down and go all the way in, I think all of us have a lot more in common than we have less in common. We all come from the same place, and we're all going to the same place, and we're all here trying to figure out life as best as we can. And I think with that understanding, you find more love in life. So sameness to me, right, is recognizing that when you can get beyond the surface, we all are looking for love, acceptance. We're all looking for people to see us for who we really are. We're all searching for a feeling of goodness, and a feeling and an expression of potential, right? So we do it in different ways. So we end up in wars and struggle and arguments and all sorts of stuff. But if we can get beyond that and really find our sameness, we're going to live in a different world.
So as you do in the book, in a way, I'm going to go back and forth a little bit between the sort of philosophy and theory and practical application. Right. So your book is, the first half is sort of more about the concepts and the second half more about application. And you use an example that struck home with me because I have been known in a situation where like a driver in front of me stops as soon as the light turns yellow and makes me late for a meeting. And my background, by the way, my professional background before radio was on the trading floor in Chicago, where it's just a whole bunch of 20 and 30-something-year-old guys who swear all the time. So in the example, though, where someone stops in front of me and I'm like running late for a meeting or just barely on time, you would not believe the stuff that comes out of my mouth at very high volume if I'm alone and my car windows are closed. I'm not flipping people off and yelling at them, but why is that bad?
Well, what is bad?
Well, why do you think it's a mistake for me to be yelling about what just happened in that circumstance? And what should be done about it?
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it a mistake, but that choice leaves you feeling frustrated, upset, angry, and focused on what's going wrong. And the other option, which is to accept reality, and reality comes with these speed bumps in the road that stop us from getting to where we want to get to at the desired time that we have, and say, okay, well, now I'm going to be later. What can I do with this time? Maybe this is an opportunity to make a phone call that I was going to make later in the day. Maybe this is a time for me to stop and, just be grateful for my family, my friends, for the things that are going well in my life. Like, so many opportunities just showed up in the fact that now you've got another 2 minutes until the light turns green, that you can choose to be upset and curse the guy out and be mad at what's happening. That's a fair option. So I wouldn't call it a mistake, but which do you want? The one where you're left feeling angry and really upset and probably more energy depleted, and then when you show up to where you're getting to, probably not going to perform at your highest level? Or do you want to choose an option where you feel more connected to yourself, you're calm, you probably have a little bit more joy, maybe stepped into gratitude and actually perform better than you would had the light not stopped?
Are you really able to do that yourself? Like when the person in front of you should have kept going and makes you late, and you just like, it'll be all right, and then think about something. Can you do that?
Yeah, and I think I'd be lying if I said every time. I mean, I'm not perfect, but it's been a practice of mine. And when you do something for years and years, like sometimes I'll throw my car into park and I'll close my eyes and do a quick, 30-second meditation, and the car behind me will let me know real fast when my meditation time is over.
Right. That's funny. And Israelis are not known for being the most patient people, by the way, for those of you who don't know much
They
about
honk
that.
while it's still red.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we got 3 or 4 minutes left, Moshe. I got so many things I want to ask you about. You have a list of things in the book. I think it's 4 things that you say we must not care about. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Can you tell us briefly what's on that list and why those things are on that list?
Right. So I read over here that we shouldn't care about what happens, what people think of you, what you have and what you don't, and your spiritual level and the things that block you from growth. So what that means practically is I try to cover just about everything. Right?
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by when I say that you shouldn't care about it is to the degree that you caring about it. In the very next line, I say, so you shouldn't care about anything. And I say, no, really, everything matters, right? Just not the way you think it does. So what that means...
And that's the obvious follow-up question, right? And in particular, with 2 of those things that you mentioned, if what happens doesn't matter and what you have doesn't matter, then what matters?
Very good. And that's exact, right? And the very next line says everything, absolutely everything, and nothing can be miscounted, right? So then, and the follow-up to that is, so now please resolve that apparent contradiction, which is you're telling me not to care about all this stuff that happens in the life, right? And on the other hand, you're saying it's all important. So how do you balance that? Which obviously we've got 2 minutes here on this show, so, and it takes about another 100 pages to answer that question. But on one foot, if we're going to look at that, what I really mean to say is that the way I perceive reality is we make life a lot more serious than it is. And it's not to say that things aren't serious when people are going through tragedy. I mean, this whole last year, we've all been affected by COVID, right? We've all been affected by what's going on in America and in Israel and all over the world. So serious things do happen. And when those things happen, it's not that we get all temperamental, it's that you have to take action in those moments. What I mean to say is we often create dramas out of our life situation, which instead of just taking an action to either fix the problem or walk away from it, we make stories and complain and create arguments and whole dramatic situations that stop us from living our life, right? From actually living a life of joy and positivity and expressing more of our great potential that we all have, right, at different times. Mm-hmm. So again, it would take more than probably a minute to answer the fundamental question of life, which is what are we all doing here and all that stuff. But
all right, I'll tell you what, I want to end with one last question with you that I was specifically saving for the end of this conversation. And for those joining, my special guest, Moshe Gersht, his new book is called It's All the Same to Me. Very near the end of your book, you say that life can be, rather than win or lose, it can be win or learn. I think that would be a great topic to finish our conversation with. Can you just talk about that briefly?
Yeah, no, Ross, I think that's great. And I think that speaks to all the points we spoke about before, which is when you walk around through life thinking that things are either going to be good or bad, win or lose, right? So it's nice when it wins, but you're going to lose at some point, right? You're going to lose in that scenario and things aren't going to go the way you'd like them to, which in the perspective of it's a loss or a failure or a mistake. So then very often the follow-up to that is, now I have to drown in my pity and my sorrow and all the things that are going wrong. But when you recognize that life can be win or learn, meaning things are going well and you celebrate that, or things didn't go the way you'd like, but now I can learn from that, either something about myself, the people I'm with, or the world that I live in, and take that with me into my next experience. So you've never lost. You've only learned a new way to live life.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Moshe. I appreciate the conversation a lot. Folks, if you want to read a really interesting book about how you can approach life in a more spiritual way, a way to designed to bring more joy into your life, which I think is really Moshe's purpose in all of this. Check out It's All the Same to Me, and Moshe's website, MosheGersht.com, will be up on my blog as well, so we'll make it real easy for you to find. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much, and congratulations on being a best-selling author after being a rock star. What a fun life you're leading.
Yeah, thank you so much, Russ. This is my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks so much, Moshe. All right, everybody, check out MosheGersht.com. Again, it'll be up at RossKaminsky.com if you have a hard time spelling any of that. When we come back, I wish I knew how the federal government did this thing it just did. And I bet a lot of Bitcoin owners also wish they knew.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Dan Kaplis today at 4, 630 KHOW, Denver.